Hello, welcome to the Road to Employment, Series 3. My name is Amy Langoni, and I am the Transition and Supported Employment Coordinator for the Utah State Office of Rehabilitation, which is otherwise known as VOC Rehab. In this training, I'm going to give you a brief overview of a core partner in the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, vocational rehabilitation. In WIOA, vocational rehabilitation is intended to work together within the workforce system to assure people with disabilities have access and get what they need for job support. For young people who are still in high school, WIOA support can mean help getting and keeping part-time jobs after school or on weekends and in the summer. Those are the natural times when all students may be working, so that it does not interrupt their participation in school, both their academic classes and extracurricular activities, which are important things not to be missed by any high school student. Every state has a VR agency, so if you've lived in another state, you may have worked with their VR agency. It might have been called something a little different because all VR agencies are state managed. VR helps people with disabilities meet their employment goals. So regardless of what state you're in, the VR agency is going to help people with disabilities in reaching employment and independence. VR assists people to prepare for, get, keep, or retain employment. And the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA, intends that vocational rehabilitation agencies provide flexible services that authentically help people reach their employment goals. So it's within the spirit of WIOA that VR agencies are flexible and individualized services to meet the individual's needs. Before we get started on VR, we're going to go over some important definitions that you're going to need to know moving forward. The first one is an employment goal. An employment goal identifies paid employment that aligns with a person's strengths, resources, priorities, concerns, abilities, interests, and informed choice. So the employment goal is individualized to that person's strengths, interests, abilities, etc. The next definition is competitive employment. Competitive employment is paid work that compensates an employee at minimum wage or better. So we're looking at, does the individual make at least minimum wage, and is their wage commensurate with that of a starting wages for an employee without a disability? So is it at least minimum wage, and does it match what a non-disabled individual would receive for that same work? The next definition is integrated employment. And that's paid work where people with disabilities work alongside non-disabled people in regular work settings. So we're looking at, does the individual with a disability work alongside non-disabled peers? The next definition is supported employment. And supported employment is a model designed for people with significant disabilities who require on-the-job training and long-term support. Oftentimes what we think of when we think of supported employment is job coaching. So an individual might need training on the job and support for a long time. The next definition is customized employment, and that is a blend of strategies, services, and supports designed to increase employment options for job seekers with complex needs and to provide support for employers. So it's really matching the individual's needs and interests with an outcome that an employer needs as well. So it's matching what things that an employer needs along with the strengths and abilities of the job seeker. You can learn more about VR by visiting our website, which I have the link at the top of the screen, jobs.utah.gov/USOR/VR. This page takes you to our application page. So as you can see, there's a link for the welcome session on the middle of your screen. If you click that link when you're on the website, it'll take you to some welcome videos that you can view in order to learn more about VR. You can also download and print an application here where it says USOR application, or a large print application as well. And then to find information or get contact information for your local VR office in Utah, you can go to this link, jobs.utah.gov/JSP/offices. So the first step in working with VR is to apply for services. In order to do that, you're going to want to contact your local VR office. Let them know that you want to attend a welcome session or that you viewed that welcome session online, which I showed you earlier. You're going to also want to obtain an application, so you can either do that by downloading the application online, or you may get the application from the VR office or another community partner that has copies of our applications, such as schools. You're going to want to fill that application out to the best of your ability, and then call and make an appointment to see a VR counselor at your local VR office. And then we provided that link earlier on how to find your local office as well. And then the next step is that your VR counselor will determine if you're eligible for our services. So we are an eligibility-based program. So in order to work with VR, you have to be eligible. And in order to be eligible, these are the things that the VR counselor will look at. First, do you have a significant physical or mental impairment? So do you have a disability? The next component to eligibility, does the individual or do you have an impairment that results in a substantial impediment to employment? So really, how does that disability impact your ability to work? The next component to eligibility is that the individual must require VR services to obtain or maintain employment. So they must need help in finding and keeping a job. And then lastly, the individual must benefit in terms of an employment outcome. If you do receive SSI or SSDI, you're probably eligible for services. So that's what we call presumed eligible for services. So the important thing to note here is to help your counselor on that initial meeting. Let them know if you're receiving SSI or SSDI. If you have proof of that SSI or SSDI, bring that with you. And then also let them know how your disability is impacting your ability to work or what your impediments are to working. Once you're eligible for services, the next step would be career exploration and discovery. So here's where you'll work with your VR counselor on identifying what a good career goal or a career match would be for you. With our career exploration, you may learn more about yourself. You may look at what you may be good at or identify what your strengths are. Your VR counselor may help you check out the local job market, look at labor market information to identify what jobs are available in your area. They may provide vocational assessments to help you identify your interests, but that's just one way that VR will work with you on identifying a career goal. A note is to be prepared. Come to your VR meeting with your own portfolio that documents your strengths, interests, job ideas, past work, and volunteer experience, accomplishments, and goals for the future. So prepare for your meeting. Bring your counselor anything that you can to help them work with you on identifying your career path. Step 4 would be to develop your plan. So once you identify your career goal, your counselor will work with you on developing what we call an individual plan for employment, or an IPE, which is really your roadmap to a job. So your IPE is an agreement between you and your vocational rehabilitation agency that states that your employment goal, it'll provide your employment goal, and then the way that you're going to achieve it. So all those steps and services that you're going to need to reach that goal. And that could include the services you need at VR or other services that you're receiving outside of VR. There's different parts to an IPE, or an individual plan for employment. And the first one is identifying your job goal. So your IPE will have your job goal on there. They will have start and end dates. So there'll be dates and time frames that you're working on. It'll have goods and services you need to achieve your goal. So it'll outline what you need and what services and other goods that you might need to achieve that goal. It'll also have your responsibilities. It'll have VR's responsibilities, and it'll be signed by you and the VR counselor and your parent or guardian, if that's applicable. The important thing to note about an IPE is that it's a working document, so it means that you may amend it or make changes to it if you or the VR counselor feel like that's a need. So anytime you amend your plan, it'll be agreed upon by you and your VR counselor as well. VR can provide a lot of different services, and those services are really individualized for the person's needs to help them reach that goal, like we talked about with the plan. Some of the services could be counseling and guidance. So every client or student who comes to VR will receive counseling and guidance with their VR counselor. We may help with transition coordination. So if you're still in high school or enrolled in post-secondary training, we may help you with that transition and making sure that you have a smooth transition to work. We may provide disability evaluation and assessment. So if an individual needs help both with evaluation and restoration, or helping you with your disability, we may help with that as well. We may provide job training and placement support. So if an individual needs help with additional training to reach an employment goal, VR may help with that, or we may help you find and keep a job through placement supports. We also might provide work-based training experiences. So if an individual needs help practicing it on a job or exploring an interest through work, we may help with that. Or supported employment, like we talked about earlier. We may help with providing job coaching on a job, or working with a community rehab program or a job developer to help you find a job and work with your employer on any accommodations that you might need, and then learning those essential job duties, so learning how to do your job. VR may also help with career exploration and assessment, so finding out what you want to do and exploring an interest a little further. In addition, if you're receiving Social Security because of your disability, we may help with Social Security work incentive planning, so understanding what will happen to your disability benefits if you do go to work. Your VR counselor might attend IEP meetings and provide technical assistance during those meetings, so they can be a valuable team member at those meetings, or 504 planning meetings if you do have a 504 plan. We may provide job readiness workshops. These are workshops that the VR counselor partners with your teacher in order to teach about job seeking skills like resume writing, interviewing, things like that. And then last but not least, VR may assist with assistive technology if you need assistive technology in order to find and keep your job. Another service that VR can provide to students is called pre-employment transition services. And these are services that are really reserved for students, so individuals who are aged 14 to 21, and then individuals who have a disability. So in order to access PreEp services, you need to be within the ages of 14 and 21. You must have a disability, and then you must be a student. So you must be enrolled in secondary or post-secondary training. So in high school, post-high, college, vocational training, things like that. So if you meet those three criteria, you may be eligible to receive PreEp services. And PreEp services are really designed to help students learn the skills needed to be successfully employed. So kind of those pre-employment skill building skills. USOR in Utah, so the Utah State Office of Rehabilitation, or Utah's Voc Rehab Agency, provides PreEps in multiple ways. We do that both in-house and through contracted and partner services. So you may work with your counselor on pre-employment skill building, or with one of our PreEps instructors, or you could access services through our contracts. And I put the link for our contracts here. So it's jobs.utah.gov/USOR/VR/about/chapter 25 Appendix B. And that'll bring you to a link where you can access information about our 10 different PreEps contracts in our state. Okay, so step 5 for VR is finding a job. So once you've received the services that you need to prep for your job, your counselor will help you with finding that employment. They may help you with things like developing a cover letter and writing your resume. They may help you practice interviewing and improving your interviewing skills so that you prepare for your interview. They may help you develop job leads or identify job leads in the area based upon what your career goal is. They might provide job coaching or help you access job coaching supports, and that's contracted with another agency, but that might be something that we pay for and help you access if you need help learning your job. We might provide on-the-job training if you need help with industry-specific skills, and that's where we would work with an employer on training you those hard skills on the job before you're employed. Or we might make referrals to other job placement agencies or private providers. So VR does not always do everything in-house or within our agency, but we do contract out and make referrals to other agencies and partners to help you as well. So after you've gotten your job and you are successful on your job and you've learned all your job tasks, we will proceed with step 6, which is closing your case. And then that is when employment is achieved. So once you've achieved employment and it's consistent with your strengths, limitations, resources, priorities, concerns, abilities, interest, and informed choice. And it's in an integrated setting. So we talked about integrated setting earlier, where you're working alongside individuals without disabilities or peers without disabilities. And it's competitive, so you're getting wages that are at least minimum wage and commensurate with those with your peers without disabilities. And VR services contributed to an employment outcome. So we want to make sure that our services helps you achieve that employment outcome. That's the time that we would start to close your case. We want to make sure during that closure process that employment is stable. So we will follow you for 90 days once you've achieved employment. And then we wouldn't close your case until you no longer need our services, and that you and the counselor are both satisfied with the employment outcome. So once you're employed and the counselor starts the closure process, the important thing here is to keep in contact with your counselor and let them know if there's any changes on your job, or if you are feeling dissatisfied, or you might need some help keeping your job after all. So the important thing here is to keep in communication with your VR counselor once you become employed. You do have rights when you're working with VR. So if VR is not meeting your needs and you disagree with any decision of your VR counselor, you can ask for that decision to be reviewed. So anytime that you have a disagreement and you can't resolve that with your VR counselor, you can have someone review that decision. You can go to their supervisor for consultation. You can also go to the district director for review. So every VR office has a district director that you can contact as well. You can go forth with an informal dispute resolution. And then next, what would happen if you couldn't resolve at that point, it might go to a fair hearing. Anytime that you need assistance mediating or advocating for yourself with a dispute, you can also call the Disability Law Center's CAP program, or Client Assistance Program. And we listed that information. We have the links there on the screen and the phone numbers. You can contact them and they can help you with that mediation support. But I think the important thing to note here is that first work with your counselor and see if you can resolve any issues that you might be having or disagreements that you're having directly with your VR counselor, because most things can be resolved with communication. Some things to note for your first VR meeting. What you might want to bring to your first meeting with VR is your portfolio, as we talked about earlier. So anything that you have that's documenting your strengths, interests, job ideas, anything that can help you and your counselor work together to identify career options. You might want to bring your summary of performance or your latest IEP if you have that available. Any medical information that you have that's relevant to your disability. So we talked about that eligibility piece before and how a counselor needs confirmation of your disability. So if you have your records, it's great to bring them with you as well. If you don't have them available, your counselor can request those from your medical provider or counseling provider with your permission. You might want to bring information on your past job-related experiences. So If you have a resume or have record of your past employment, that's a great idea to bring that as well. You'll need your ID or documentation that you are a citizen. So if you have an ID, birth certificate, etc. You'll need to have your social security number with you and available for the VR counselor. You need to have that for your application and registering your case. And then your completed VR application, like we talked about earlier. So complete your application to the best of your ability, and the VR counselor can help you fill in any gaps or complete the application if you need that assistance as well. Prepare for questions that you might want to ask during the meeting. So if you have questions about VR, please jot those down, and then feel free to ask those questions of your counselor when you have your first meeting. And then you might want to practice what you are going to say. So you might want to run through a practice scenario, or we talked about letting your counselor know what your impediments to working are. You might want to practice those ahead of time so you are more versed on how to say that to your counselor. But they'll help you with it as well.